Well, thank you to the gentleman from Georgia. And again, I want to reiterate, I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for overlapping interest and conversation here about how we can combine our efforts and enlarge the number of providers available to help people who are struggling with addiction. 107,000 of our fellow countrymen are not with us right now because they have succumbed to addiction in 1 year. So why on earth would we be advocating for limiting the number of providers that can help people? Housing First may help some people. And the idea of Housing First is that there's no conditions, none. Nothing is required of the individual receiving housing assistance. All they have to do is have a roof over their head, and that's it. And there can be no reciprocal commitments made by the individual receiving that assistance. And, for some of those individuals who are struggling, God bless them because they have the courage to want to get help themselves. And I know these people, they've struggled through it, and it takes a lot of personal sacrifice and will to overcome these kind of powerful opioid addictions on their own with no help. But the reality is that's not how addiction works. The reality is, in my district, in the organizations that provide for individuals who are struggling with this very powerful addiction, is that these individuals cannot do it by themselves. And Housing First is this crazy idea that we're just going to put someone who's got a serious addiction in a subsidized house and not help them. And that is wrong because it doesn't work. What works is intensive services, long-term services, addiction counseling, recovery housing, meaning that they are connected. And yes, there are some organizations, not-for-profit organizations with an incredibly successful track record in every congressional district in this country that do, in fact, provide some tough love. And what they say to individuals struggling with addiction, including many in my district, whose lives have been saved by this, they require as a condition for continuation in the program that they work with other individuals who've struggled with addiction. You can have this housing, and we want you to stay, and we're going to love you, but you've got to listen to other individuals who have gone through this program, and you got to do peer-to-peer with them as a condition of being part of this program. And it's that assistance from others who have gone through the same struggle. That's what works. That's what saves lives. Not just putting someone in a subsidized apartment and walking away. That does not work. At least that's what my constituents tell me. And so let's connect these two the way that the gentlelady says we want to by offering not just the Housing First concept, and I'm not trying to do away with the Housing First concept. I'm just saying let's provide some other organizations the same opportunity, specifically organizations that require, as part of their program, that you go through AA, that you go through NA, that you go through a multi-step program, addiction counseling, sobriety requirements. And there's another dimension to this too. In my district, there's a great women and children shelter that is not Housing First and therefore not eligible for federal assistance. And the ladies who were in this, who are pleading to me to help them get some federal funding, they begged me not to require the shelter to bring in actively addicted people because their recovery depended on them being in a sober place with other sober people. And Housing First doesn't allow that. It doesn't require that everyone in the facility remain sober and on the road to recovery. And that's the best way for people to slip up and relapse. So look, I think we all want the same thing here, but the idea that with a crisis of this magnitude on our hands, we're going to limit the scope of the providers available to actually provide, help to people does not make intuitive sense to me. That's why I've offered the Housing Plus Act that would provide at least some of the continuum of care funds to these organizations that don't do Housing First. And that's why I offered this amendment. And I urge my colleagues to support this to enlarge the number of organizations that can help save lives. And I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman.